tied into the rest of Thanks for the Effing Love. I just thought it was interesting, especially in compared to Expansion. There's a somberness and a kind of a disappointment, in my opinion, of a lot of the evolution of society and where we are as people, generally speaking, and of course, Black people in America. So, what that has been something I think that's been a mainstay of your material in varying degrees over the years, but I do think it's a through line. Yeah. So, how and why does that permeate so much of your music and then Arrested Development's music as well?
Yeah, I'm glad you noticed it, because I think that's really been a theme for us since day one, you know, like our first album. You know, the name of the group is Arrested Development, is the development is arrested. We felt like that before we even got a deal, before we came out, when we were just naming the group. That was our sort of take. And for me, I think the reason is that I see too much oppression. I can't ignore it. I'm from Milwaukee. So Milwaukee is a very in-your-face town. If you go to the Black community in Milwaukee, it's the ghetto. Period. End of story. If you go to out of the Black community, it's nice and it's gorgeous and it's one of the most beautiful cities in America. Maybe unknown, but beautiful.
Yeah, I've been to Bradford Beach. I can attest. It's very nice. It's very nice.
You know what I'm saying? So it's very in your face. It's undeniable, and that's my growing up. That's how I see the world because of, you know, where I grew up, and so yeah, I feel like there's a lot of growth that needs to happen, and I'm so, you know, so I talk a lot about that in the music, you know. So whether it's Mr. Wendal, where really Mr. Wendal is an intentional homeless man, like he's a rebel against society, and a lot of the music that accompanies it, these types of lyrics, are intentionally happy and upbeat in a sense, but lyrically, yeah, it's always been that way, you know. Even Tennessee, you know, Lord, I've really been real stressed. It's the first word. It's the first line of the song.
Well, that's why I brought it up, because listening to Never Had Your Back, or even Thank You, We're Not in Kansas, some of the other songs I want to talk about, even Unity, it's like there's a certain strength in it, but it's also disappointment and a beaten downness, for lack of a better way to put it. And that has been a constant thread.
I think that's fair. And I mean, I think to some extent, and I don't think this was intentional, but a lot of the stuff I write is blues. It's blues, but to hip hop music at the end of the day. Because I think what even inspires me to write in general, at least, is bad things. Like very rarely do I write a song because of life is fantastic, you know? So, yeah.
Well, that's why on Expansion, Rome Can Fall, for instance, was so like, whoa, what is this? Because that, on the flip side, is like, hey, no matter what happens, I got you, and we got each other, and this is beautiful. And that is why listening to Expansion and Thanks for the Effing Love consecutively, not knowing the story until today about them being recorded so
far apart.
So far apart, it was striking. So
yeah, you know, even with Rome Can Fall, to me, what's funny about that is I know that the world will live without us, and it's almost saying that, you know, the world like will pass us by. It's only a matter of time. We're all sort of irrelevant to the newer generations that will come after us, and so it's still got this tone of like blues to me. But the silver lining to me is that we have each other, and like, so to me, it's a very like tunnel vision love song, like just me and you against the world. but I feel like that's been my take for quite a while, you know, because there's a song called "You" on our first album, the debut speech AD album, and one of the last lines of the song is, "In my world, there's just us three: you, me, and God." And to me, that's sort of like the theme always. Like it's like us against the world, you know, almost like Pac's record, you know, me against the world. I just feel like it's us against the world. I think it is my over romanticism of love and like relationship, like, you know, a love relationship, and maybe a over, you know, like dissing of everything else, you know, say like the rest of the world.
Fair enough. But
Yeah.
that's also because on Vibe, which features Big Daddy Kane, the music is very upbeat and all that. But then you're talking about trying not to let your depression get you down and all this different stuff. But the music feels good, I guess, which I've always thought was such an interesting confluence that you execute. But also, it's about the strength that we have in ourselves. So, how do you find depression, racism, social debacles, everything that we have? How have you found that you've been able to weather the not only societal storms but intellectual, mental storms to keep putting out music, to keep being successful?
Yeah, I think for me, I say it in one of our songs on "Don't Fight Your Demons" album. I get depressed, but I press through. More or less, it says more or less. I guess I just get through. Um, there's a song called "Pardon My what's it called? Pardon My Disruption." I don't know what it's called, something like that. But pardon me for I don't know. But it's a cool song. But the point is like I do think the inner strength and spirituality is what allows me to overcome it at the end of the day. But for me, at least, the depression is always sort of over there. It's like that dog just waiting for me to throw it a treat, you know? And it's very real, and it's very you know, it could stop me in my tracks pretty easily. And so but at the end of the day, I can't wallow in that. Like that's just my personality. So I have to sort of think about what's the good, but I don't want to ignore the fact of what I'm feeling down, you know, somewhere deep down. I don't like to ignore that. And I don't like sort of popcorny records. Like I don't like records that make things seem like everything's good. You know, like I don't like the social media Instagram way of sort of looking at someone's life. You know, I don't like that. I'd rather be more honest and real, but at the same time give solutions that, you know, can help you push through regardless of, you know, that type of thing.
Okay. And then with the Vibe and Swing'em, you got two videos also on the farm. So what made you? I know you talk about buying land and being a farm on throughout For the F and Love, but what made you actually want to shoot the videos there?
I mean, it was a mixture. You know, we've been getting so much love on the "Don't Fight Your Demons" album, which we only did one video for that, and then for this F and Love record, we've gotten even more love. So, like at the last minute, I decided not to shoot the music videos in a nice little indoor building because we were getting people to pay attention to us for the first time in a long time. And I wanted some of those people that knew us from the 90s to feel a sense of nostalgia with the Southern sort of motif and looks that we had in the 90s. Like most of our videos, People Every Day, Tennessee, um, even Mr. Wendal, a lot of those scenes took place in rural South. And so I wanted people that were just sort of almost like a TV show. If you were just joining us again, it's like, oh, I remember this. Like this brings back something good that I remember from the 90s if they were a fan in the 90s. So I wanted to make sure that we sort of brought those people on board with this record. And at the same time, um, I've always been a fan of this country motif and that whole energy for numerous reasons. I grew up that way in Tennessee, not Milwaukee, but in Tennessee where I spent time with my grandmother every summer. I spent time in an extremely rural environment, well water. I talk about it on We're Not in Kansas. Chicken coops, outhouses where you go to use the bathroom in the backyard. And, you know, is very much a real part of my life. So for me, it taught me self-determination. It taught me, you know, self-reliance. And as a people, we need that too. So I felt like that's a cool thing to inject into the hip hop, like the overall hip hop scope of all the videos anyone would digest on a given day. To have something like this, I still felt was good on all levels. You know what I mean?
And in both the vibe and the swing'em videos, you also have the television strategically placed.
Yeah.
So what led to that, and or why'd you do it?
Yeah, to be honest, that was 100% Tony Reams, who is the director of both of those videos, and he did another video that'll come out soon called "Thank You." He wanted to have that television as the sort of this one of the streamlines through all the videos, and he got that television at some, I don't know, secondhand store for $15 or something. He gutted it out, and we put a green screen on it, and then he just puts whatever he wants on it. And he was really adamant, and I don't get me wrong, I love the idea anyway. And Tony Reams is a beast. Like he did some of our older stuff video wise, a song called "Living" in particular he did, which was great. He did another song called "Up for Us," but he's done Fife, you know, which has been amazing. He did the remix with Busta and Redman and all. So I mean, he's done a lot of cool stuff, and we're fans of each other just by nature. I'm a fan of him as a human being, his family, his fatherhood, but also his talent. And then he's a fan of Arrested Development and me. So it just was a great fit, you know, for us to just work together. And the TV was totally his idea.
Okay. Well, as far as swing'em, also you have Master Ace on the song. He does the third verse, and Fat Man Scoop is on the song. It's very upbeat. It's like a club party thing. And then Master Ace comes in, and he's talking about super heavy stuff like lynchings and racism and murder and all kinds of stuff. So how did that end up working for you creatively?
It was so interesting. Like, so me and Fat Man Scoop, he had a song that he asked me to get on. I did it. It never came out. We stayed friends. When this record was being created, I called him and said, "Hey, I needed a hype, somebody that just could bring that straight frenetic energy." And he's that guy. And so that's how he got on the record. In my mind, I was like, well, we're going to make this like a barbecue joint like Main Source, or we're going to make this like the Tribe Called Quest joint. And I'm like, this is going to be that party record. And when I asked Master Ace to get on it, in my mind, he was going to come with some party type of, you know, just lighthearted, you know, just bars. And when I heard his verse, I laughed because I was like, wow. He totally flipped it on its head and gave us something that was totally different, which for me is totally in my wheel. This is in my storehouse. Like everything he talked about is what I would normally talk about. So I just laughed to myself because I was like, the hanging from trees references and things like this, like he said, hanging from a sycamore. I talked about it on Tennessee, like from first record out with Arrested Development, you know, climb the trees my forefathers hung from, you know, like it's totally in my storehouse and wheelhouse of what I would do. So I'm talking about from a subject matter standpoint, not how he flowed it, but it was like, I loved it. Like it took me a minute because it was so poetic and it was so much of a surprise because his verse was the last verse on the record that was recorded. When I send records to any artist that I want to guest on, for their sake, I don't give them a blank track. I send it basically done so that they can feel where this record's trying to go. And when he sent me back that verse, because this was during the pandemic, so we couldn't work in the same studio at the time. And so when he sent me back that verse, I just chuckled and I loved it. I thought it was killer. I thought it was poetic and I thought it was deep. And to me, it brings the deepest part of the chorus out of that song because we keep climbing like we're King Kong. This ain't a song. This is an anthem. Everybody sing along, hands in the air, swing them, swing them. To me, brings out the deeper meaning of what that chorus can mean. Just keep climbing. And his verses to me like that, you know, it's just climb, climb, black man, climb, whoever he's talking to, just climb, like go from here to here. And to me, that's what he's saying when I listen to that verse. But I love it. At the end of the day, I think he killed it.
Yes, he did. And with speaking of different things on this level, with thank you, climbing out of things, you're talking about thanking your parents.
Yeah.
And one thing that I really appreciated about thank you was how a lot of times in music, we hear a lot of people complain about things that are wrong. But with thank you, you actually offered some solutions with granting clemency to nonviolent offenders and different things. So for you, what was the genesis and the desire to put in, like, yes, you identify a lot of problems throughout Thanks for the Effing Love, but on Thank You, you're offering some solutions.
You know, I love that song. Configure sent me a track basically the way it is. And it already had thank you in the chorus as a sample. Thank you very much. And the strings were clearly, you know, celebratory to me. And in the beat was almost like a two-step type of, you know, step in the name of love type of beat, like Chicago step type of thing. And so immediately what starts coming to my mind is a celebration, people coming to a party, people hanging out, you know, doing the wobble or whatever the new dance is together, and just celebrating, having fun. You know, somebody's cooking some food over there or whatever. And but then at the same time, you know, when I started going into the second verse and I started talking about my, you know, my mother, my father, so on and so forth, then it goes back to like all the issues, you know what I mean, that's going on, and the political prisoners, and, you know, getting people out of prison, and these nonviolent brothers and sisters that are locked away in these prisons. Meanwhile, people are selling drugs legally now. It doesn't make sense. Like, there's a lot of families that have been torn apart because of these laws, where somebody that's selling a slight amount of drugs gets thrown away for long periods of time. And meanwhile, there's now, most states are legal, and there's people selling drugs right out in the open, and nobody's getting any problem, you know, any trouble. And meanwhile, there's still people behind bars because of this. So it's, you know, I think I was in Canada, and they were either entertaining or they did create clemency for people that were nonviolent offenders of drugs. And so it was my way of sort of prophetically, you know, hoping for the exact same here in America. I spent time in jail recently, not as a criminal. I went in on purpose, and I did a movie called 16 Bars, where I went into a jail in Virginia, in Richmond, Virginia. And I was with residents or inmates for like 10 days straight, talking with them, learning about the various problems and the complexities of our prison system. And so all of that was on my heart too, as I was writing that verse.
And how did 16 Bars come out?
Yeah, it's out. And it's, I think it's a powerful film. It's out on YouTube right now, but it's been out on numerous other streaming services. And if you look up 16 Bars, the film, maybe throw speech in there, and it's very easily findable, and it's a beautiful film, and it documents my entire journey in this 10-day time in prison. And I'm glad I've never been to prison in any real way, and I'm glad that I don't, you know, I was there in the sense of filming and really trying to shed light on these men and women that were in there. And I think the documentary does a great job. So yeah, 16 Bars of film.
Yeah, I look forward to checking it out. I did read last year, I believe it was, that Chicago and Illinois were going to be granting clemency to hundreds of thousands, I think it was, cases. So hopefully there is some movement in that direction.
I think what people don't realize is that clemency will allow families to get back together, daughters and sons to be able to see their father and mother for the first time, in many cases, and in a long time, in more cases. So, you know, it's a very important thing. And I think people that's never been to prison and aren't in that sort of that lane, they wouldn't know just how much this ruins families and how these laws can affect families. And so it's easy to sort of ignore all of this stuff if you're not in that lane. But when you're in that lane and you've been affected by it, it's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of times in entertainment or even on the news, it's always like someone was shot, but you don't think about their wife, their girl, their daughter, their mom, their dad, or
exactly right. What has that done to the family? You know,
yeah.
what has it done to everybody that's in their circumference of reality, you know? And it's a lot of skeletons, no pun intended, in the wake of all of that. And it's tough.
Be sure to check out the History of Gangster Rap by Soren Baker. He's official.
History of Gangster Rap features exclusive interviews with Ice-T, Snoop Dogg, MC Ren, the D.O.C, and dozens of others. The History of Gangster Rap, a definitive look at how Los Angeles changed rap forever.
In Los Angeles, the streets definitely set the tone of the hip-hop music.
At 19, I got a $50,000 car.
My whole angle always was, I'll be street, but I will always tell you the horrors that go along with this life.
It would be penalties and casualties for just wearing the wrong color in somebody's neighborhood.
And once gangster rap made it from the streets to the TV, the genre exploded.
With Fab 5 on Your MTV Raps with NWA.
Yo MTV, it just catapulted us from being local heroes to national gangbang rappers.
The History of Gangster Rap discusses it all from 1980 up till today.
It's always gonna be shit happening in the streets. You know what I mean? So it's always gonna be something to talk about.
The History of Gangster Rap in stores now.